Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, an interesting conversation you had there. I must say that we do hope the issue of crude supply to domestic refineries would be resolved now that the NUPRC said they have a platform. I think IOCs are supposed to submit, the price and all of that. And it's not just Dangote that needs this crude. You also have the other smaller refineries, the modular refiners and all of that. We had a lot of them on the program in recent times. So, and remember the NNPC did promise Dangote crude even before that refinery was opened. But, well, these are ongoing conversations that we are going to follow on our different programs right here on Channels Television. All you have to do is stick with us. Good morning. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We start as usual from the oil space. Yes, global oil prices is what we're looking at. We see that U.S. reserve is a major, talking about the price of oil this morning. Also, China was second consumer. We had a GDP yesterday not looking good at all, and that is affecting sentiment in the oil market. We see prices drop 0.25%. $84.64 a barrel, and also for WTI, $81.66 a barrel. And that's because of that GDP from China. It grew by 4.7% April till June. That's the slowest since the first quarter of 2023, missed the forecast of 4.1%. And China, second world biggest consumer, once their demand goes down, we see it even affecting luxury brands in the United Kingdom and other parts of the world. Also, Fed Chair Jerome Powell has said that the 3 U.S. inflation readings over the second quarter of the year add somewhat confidence, but we don't have a firm promise that there'll be interest rate cuts, lower interest rate cuts, of course, decrease the cost of borrowing, which can boost economic activity, oil being at the top of that. And then we come to Nigeria to put a close look at the Naira. Well, an inverse relationship is what we saw between NAFEM and NAFEX. But I would always say the major market is NAFEM. So what happens there is really what concerns us. We see NAFEM close at 1,577 Naira, 29 kobo. Looking like we're getting close to 1,600. Not comforting at all. Yesterday was down. The Naira dropped 0.86%. That's too close to 1% for comfort. NAFEX, however, was on the inverse. I guess less activity right there, because even in the parallel market, there was a drop on the Naira. And the worrying thing these days, and this has been happening, I think, for about 2 weeks now, is that this drop happens in spite of intervention from the CBN. So we see the CBN selling dollar to the banks for the official market. In spite of that, we still see a drop. It means that demand is really getting heavy. And I don't know if it's extra heavy. Are they paying school fees at this time? Is there something that is pulling on this, the flow of FX in the Nigerian market? That, of course, is a worrying one. And then, we're talking about food security. That's a topic we cannot stop talking about until we are filled. And right here on Business Morning, Business Incorporated, it is our major focus. Yesterday, there was that announcement. I wonder if it should gladden our hearts. But we did hear after the Federal Executive Council meeting that each state and the FCT in Nigeria gets about 20 trucks of rice to be shared. As usual, to be shared. And then, of course, the sharing formula comes up. But let's hear the Minister of Information tell us the details.
Each of the state governors has received 20 trucks of rice for onward distribution to the most vulnerable. This is a first step, and the federal government will continue to support all the state governors, the local government, all the subnationals, so that the hardship being experienced by most Nigerians in terms of shortage of food supply is bridged. Government will continue to do whatever it takes to ensure that Nigerians have enough food to eat. Of course, you also know some of the interventions that the federal government has done in the agricultural sector, boosting our own capacity to produce food, not just for our domestic consumption, but also possibly for export, and government will continue to do that. We know that this will not solve the problem entirely, but this is a necessary first step that it has taken, and government will continue to do that. And you can see the speed with which the federal government has ensured that this is done. Now, what we want to say is the federal government also wants to appeal to the subnationals to ensure effective distribution of these food items so that those that are most vulnerable have access to this commodity.
So there you have it, another effort from the federal government to resolve the issue of food shortage in the country. And this links directly to inflation. Inflation numbers for the month of June came out yesterday. We saw headline inflation hit a new 28-year high, 34.19%, and maintaining that uptrend for the 19th consecutive time amid worsening state of hardship in the country. You have the number there. See, food inflation is a major driver, 40.87, getting really close to 41. In spite of all of this effort, and we see the items that drove that food inflation to about 40.87 there is millet, gari, yam, groundnut oil, palm oil, and all of that. Now, let's drill down into this with the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Orani. Mr. Orani, good morning, and thank you for your time.
Good morning for having me, and thank you for having me.
Great. So I know you're not surprised. There was, of course, that forecast from FDC, and then we see it now. I know you did about 34% in your forecast. Does it meet your expectation?
No, we are actually accurate in our forecast. So that we expected that, and so it was no surprise. But let's get down to the meat of the matter. The truth is that inflation has increased, but it's also increasing. It was beginning to slow down, but it increased at a slightly higher pace. But the month of June, these are June inflation numbers we're talking about. Month of June, a couple of things happened. One, there was fuel shortage. Two, there were 3 or 4 public holidays. There was the Salah holiday. There was June 12. And 3, it was the end of the planting season, and basically we begin to see the beginning of the harvest season in July, August. Now, 4 is that people are resisting price increases. Incomes are down. There's a cost of living crisis, and people cannot afford. And if you look at the price that increased the highest, they were basic items. There was gari, there was yams, but the proteins, the proteins, which is meat, fish, meat, and other livestock, actually did not increase. So the big elephant in the room were actually the usual suspects, which is the cereals, the gari, yam, groundnut oil, palm oil, and millet. Those were now. 2 is the fact that we are beginning to see in the last day or 2, we've seen a drop in some prices, which quite strangely enough, while many have increased, as you can see from that chart, we are now we're going to be talking about pepper later this afternoon, but the price of pepper, which was 60,000 naira a bag a year ago, got all the way to 150,000, and this morning it has dropped in Ibadan to as low as 60 or 70,000 naira. Why this movement? 1, there's been smuggling of commodities across the border. 2, there's a resistance in income. And 3, the petrol price increase is having a feeding effect into the price of commodities. And so people are basically going back to the basics and not the luxury goods. When I say luxury goods, the ostentatious goods. They are going back to the basics, the gari, the flour, and things like that.
So do we say that protein is also luxury at this time?
No, protein. The price of protein is a luxury because first and foremost, you must have the rice, you must have the swallow, they have the sauce before you now put the protein on top. So you can switch protein, different types of protein as you wish. But what we are seeing is that people are not increasing the quantity of protein they're taking. They're eating less chicken, less beef, and less fish in some cases. Wow. And that is playing onto the prices. Yeah. You know what happened with tomatoes? and it went all the way up, and now it's beginning to come down because the people substituted to carrots and other things.
Yes, other substitutes. Mr. Rani, let's talk about the efforts of the government. We know that the 150 import duty-free policy that was announced has been criticized by the president of AFDB, Dr. Adeshino, looking at the impact it will have on domestic investments and farming and the agriculture sector. Now, yesterday we had that announcement of about 20 trucks of rice to be shared in states. Do we see these calming the numbers, especially food inflation? We see it's really getting close to 41%. Do we see it doing any good to those numbers and in reality?
No, the way to look at it is to look at it in two distinct segments. One is a stabilization phase where you have a crisis. And the other one is a long-term strategic phase where you now build capacity to increase output and aggregate supply. Now, what has happened now is these short-term measures, which is to import commodities, to actually force down the prices. It's just like akin to a patient who is in an accident scene and he has high blood pressure. You want to operate on him, you must crash the blood pressure down first before you now begin to you stabilize the patient before you now begin to treat the patient long-term. The Nigerian economy is fragile, it's weak, it's actually tottering on the brink of a crisis, a debt crisis, poverty crisis, and also output crisis. Now, to solve these things, you need a temporary infusion of imports to bring down the price of goods, but it does not solve the problem. It only helps to ameliorate the immediate pain. The real problem is about growth, investment, and output. So all of those things put together, you cannot grow, really. We don't solve the power problem. We can spend the entire money talking about the problems, and they are well documented. What we are talking about is short-term solutions, medium-term solutions, and long-term solution. What we are trying to do, or what I think I hear the policymakers saying, is that let us import stuff now and then get it to the people. But the fact that you are importing commodities, the fact that you have trucks leaving the warehouses, if they are leaving with anything, does not mean it gets to the vulnerable. The big problem is, who are the vulnerable? Who is identifying them? Is it going to be scandal-free? Is it going to be judiciously executed in such a way that the impact is felt? As we speak today, those things, there's the institutional infrastructure to ensure that those bags and those trucks of fertilizers, trucks of rice will get to the people in those states. I'm not sure that is going to happen, because I can almost assure you that those trucks, when they get to, say, my state, in Delta State, I'm not sure how it gets down to the people in the streets or in the markets of Warri, Sapele, Ughelli, Asaba, and others. So announcements are good, promises are good, but the truth is that until you feel the impact in the marketplace, it will just be another, what I call, pie in the sky.
Another reason to worry right there, in spite of that seemingly good news. And we still have the minimum wage. The president had promised that this week that will be resolved. Yes. But I know you've always warned us about the consequences of an increased earning for workers.
Now, the problem with the minimum wage, and I'm very familiar with this topic because I was a chairman in 2019. First and foremost, any increase in wages without an increase in productivity will lead to higher inflation. Any increase in wages which is totally out of line with their capacity and ability to pay by the private sector will create problems. So it has to be a three-way conversation based on honesty. That is, the government that is proposing it must be honest, must not be seen to be ostentatious and living lavishly. The unions must be realistic, because they know that the private sector, anybody who employs more than 25 people, if they pay it, we don't want a retrenchment of our workers. And the whole impact on macroeconomic stability has to be considered. It might sound simple, but it is not as simple as it looks, because if you know that we're coming from 30,000 2019 plus the 35,000 stipend which has not been paid, and then you now go on to the numbers I'm hearing, which are three digits or what you call it. that could actually derail a number of things. But thank God, the subsidies, the benefits of reduced subsidy will be plowed back, as far as the government is concerned, into the revenue profile. But that does not take care of the ordinary man, the ordinary entrepreneur who is employing people, who needs to generate some income and revenue to stay afloat, stay solvent, and stay liquid.
And I'm sure all of this will be on the table for the MPC, which is next week.
Yes. So what we are seeing is that with the inflation rate, the way it's going, we think that the MPC, our projections that the MPC will maintain status quo. The governor of the central bank at the CEO forum did talk about the fact that he expects inflation to start declining. It's already declining. It's already increasing at a slower pace, and that he thinks at the end of the year, God will touch wood, we should begin to see inflation decline and interest rates begin to decline. Because at certain rates of interest, it becomes very difficult to accumulate capital to have an internal rate of return which will make projects viable. So for us in July, we think that the MPC will maintain the status quo. But if inflation in July comes out and it doesn't move in the direction that we expect it to, that is, if it starts increasing again because of various factors, then in the MPC meeting in September, I think the central bank will have no hesitation and no reservation about attacking the interest rates again and making it move higher. But from what we can see from a equilibrium perspective, general equilibrium perspective, we think that inflation will moderate, except only one factor or two factors. One, the minimum wage goes out of control and is not managed properly. Two, if the exchange rate continues to depreciate right now, it's at about 15.70, and we don't know what's going to happen. If the exchange rate depreciates sharply and the minimum wage goes out of control, then all bets are off. But, we are cautiously optimistic that there'll be reason at the end of the day that the government will rein in a lot of the ostentatious spending and, what I call conspicuous consumption, and that the government will also try to insist that the monies and the palliatives, or whatever you call it, get to the people and begin to moderate prices. But if it becomes a scam and the money, the goods do not get to the people, one. Two, ostentatious living and conspicuous consumption continues, then there'll be a breakdown in confidence and a breakdown in trust between the people, the governed, and the governing.
Mr. Arwani, yeah, obviously. And as you would always say, trust seems to be in deficit once again. The people need to trust. So even though we had that announcement, we do not know if it's going to get to the people who really need it so that the impact will be felt. But thank you so much, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
That's right. Still looking forward to the days when there'll be food sufficiency in Nigeria. It's our drive here, and we hope you join us. Now let's go to something a bit different from that. It's it's the e-platform of the NGX, the digital platform, which they expect to make the most of, especially now that the capital market is very busy since the banks are on the recapitalization drive. We have joining us Mr. Temi Popola. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Exchange Group. Thank you so much, Mr. Popola, and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this e-platform for a very long time. I guess this is a very unique time for it to come up. We see that so many banks are heading to the capital market.
That is correct. So yes, indeed. If you go back, I think several years, actually, you would find that the exchange, the regulator, the SEC, and critical market stakeholders have always looked forward to an opportunity like this, where we can, just distribute securities electronically, distribute our securities digitally, very unlike the paper sort of approach that has historically been used. So this is, I think, the result and the fruit of collective efforts in that regard. Several years of work by, many people, many stakeholders. We're very fortunate to be bringing this to life now.
So I believe this is in line with the modernization of the Nigerian capital market infrastructure.
That is correct. So yes, indeed, if you think through several aspects of just what it takes both to raise capital at the primary level and also then to transact in those securities at the secondary market, you would find that different parts of that ecosystem, needs to be digitized a bit further. On the secondary market side of things, if you look there, you would find that the exchange, the SEC, the CSCS, and all the market infrastructure, that portion of our market has been very digital. If you remember during COVID, for example, the exchange was shut for 3 years as no one was allowed to move physically. And for those 3 years, we never had a single down day or downtime in trading. This speaks to the heart of digitization there. So what we've done now is just to try to extend that and push that frontier into primary markets. And so today, you can very, very easily, for any of the primary market offerings that you've heard about today, many of the banks doing rights issuances, doing public offers. If you simply go right now to invest.ngxgroup.com, you'll be able to invest in those securities in under 2 minutes, starts to finish, with a very smooth, sort of experience, the ability to pay electronically, and that gateway is connected to every other part of the ecosystem, that you would normally need to connect with for a primary market issuance.
Could you say that website again? And also, what are some of the requirements? I do know before now you need to have a CSCS number and all of that. What about some of those requirements?
Sure. Thank you very much. So the website is actually that's 3 W's. So www.invest.ngxgroup.com, invest.ngxgroup.com. So yes, you raise a very good point. Traditionally, if you're an existing investor in the capital market, you would need to have what you call a CHN number or CSCS number. This platform allows you to put that CHN CSCS number in there, and it will pull you up from the central database. If for whatever reason, either because you can't remember those numbers or those digits, or perhaps because you actually don't have one, because you maybe haven't invested before, or you don't remember when last you invested, that's also okay. You can come in there as a new investor. The experience is very seamless. You'll be asked to select a broker. You will be aware that, to transact securities in the capital markets here, you need a broker. So you'll be given the opportunity to pick a broker. And in the back end, whether it's to fetch the CHN number that you had before that you can't remember, or whether it's to create a new one, all of that will be done electronically in the back end. So there are APIs into the CSCS, for example, that's responsible for that. There are APIs into NIBS to just ensure that the person that you claim you are is who you really are for KYC. There's connections into payment gateways. So it's a very smooth, nice experience. Whether you know those CHN numbers, whether you don't, whether you've ever transacted before, it's all there for you to use.
So are you planning to expand beyond the primary securities, which you're doing now on the digital platform?
The simple answer is no. So there's very strict regulation that governs what we do within sort of as an exchange. But also, if you remember, as I started earlier, when you look at the secondary markets part of our business, It's very, very efficient. It's highly digitized. What we're just trying to do here is to, within the ambits of the regulation that governs us by the SEC, see how much more support we can offer to our ecosystem. I mean, we do have in that primary market space many digital, sort of intermediaries. As a matter of fact, if you go back in 2021, there was an end-to-end digital sort of, capital raising activity then. What we have done now, is to scale that effort. So in this situation now, you would have many of the banks who, for example, are connected to this gateway, which means that for many banks today, if you go at the end of your mobile device, you're trying to transact, you're trying to transfer money normally, you would find an opportunity also to participate and to acquire their shares or their rights. And that is because of APIs that the banks also have consumed. So you can think of this now as scaling that up, giving a lot more multiple access and gateways into the central platform, of which this NGX Invest website we mentioned just now is just another gateway. But the centrality of it is this platform that aggregates everything and makes all the back end work and activity and capital raising a lot more smoother.
But doesn't that imply that perhaps there will be some time when this platform, the digital platform, will be fallow? Because I know the market is very busy now with the banks. But do you often have the primary securities, coming into the market?
Absolutely. So when we talk about primary, it's actually these banks being busy. So if you take, I'm trying to be careful not to mention any bank now, but for any that is currently raising capital today, when you go on this website, invest.ngxgroup.com, you'll be asked to log in like any website or interface of such a nature. Once you're in, you would find the ability for every single one of those bank securities that you can select. And as I said, in under 2 minutes, you'd be done investing in those securities. So by primary market, those are the transactions actually that we refer to. Today, as far as we know, there are 2 rights issuances by 2 banks, and there are 2 public offers by 2 banks. All 4 offerings are live on this platform, and you can invest in them in minutes.
All right, talking about making it easy now, I know that the NGX is making the most of this opportunity. But thank you so much, Mr. Atemi Kwekwala, for this. We'll be looking forward to, this digital platform and ease into getting into the market for a while. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right, now talking about the markets. Now let's see how the market closed yesterday. Closed in the positive. Fresh air, breath of fresh air coming right there. So we see that this is the smaller market. But the NGX yesterday closed 0.30 in the positive. And the all-share index, 99,900, very close, 99,966.28. That was the all-share index. There you have it. See, really close, 99,966. Hopefully by intraday, we should come here with good news. Equity cap 56.6 because the market gained 167.1 billion naira at the close of trade. And well, yours truly, the banking sector is still reigning 1.13% in the positive. We'll give you fresh intraday numbers at 1 p.m. I'll be back with Will. We will give you the mark. But now let's head back to Sunrise Daily Studio.